Elizabeth, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be with you.
The pleasure is all mine. I was a teenager of the 1990s, so as you can imagine, I was a fan of yours, starting with Saved by the Bell and then moving on up throughout your career. So it's really cool to get to talk to you in advance of what is a really cool event at the Paramount Theater here in Austin on Thursday that's really kicking off a sort of 30th anniversary celebration of the greatness that is Showgirls. And preparing for this conversation, man, what a fascinating film and a journey that you've taken with this film as well, Elizabeth. And this is now finally 3 decades later, a sort of a start of a victory lap for you and getting to take this film around the country and celebrate with fans young and old. How great does it feel to get to this point after all that you've been through with this movie?
Okay, first of all, you're going to make me cry. I love the victory lap term because there's a sweetness about this moment. And I guess that's what a victory lap should feel like. And it's also not just an ego driven moment. This is really a celebration, like you said, for the fans that all these years have loved it, whether they embraced it from the get-go, unlike some of the critics. Like you said, there's a journey here for sure. And even now, like a new generation of fans who are discovering it for the first time in their 20s, who come up to me where they, of course, didn't ever know that it had some sort of charge to it or voltage, in the mid 90s, where it was a bit ahead of its time. And now they just embrace it for the creative aspects, the camp aspect, the cult aspect, whether it's creatives who draw inspiration from it. It could be a DP, it could be an actor, makeup artist, fashion, TV, film. It seems to be kind of on people's mood boards and vision boards, when I go into like makeup rooms and trailers on other shows I'm working on, where we had a lot of talent involved on this project, and the ripple effect of it through these years, particularly, I would say, for me, I became extremely aware that it was having this other life. I would say about 15 years ago, it was very clear to me, like, oh, there are screenings being held that are selling out. There are communities and groups of people coming together, particularly LGBTQ communities, where they embrace the film from the get-go. Frankly, it really is a moment, though, to celebrate. So I just love the way you put it.
Thank you. And I guess to give people a little bit of background, this is a film that you wanted badly. And I'm not going to have you rehash that right now. You've talked about
That's
that in other
okay.
conversations, but you made every effort to make that happen. You killed it in the screenings. But you have talked about also that the movie that you thought you were making when you were going through those initial screenings, it ended up being a little bit different once you actually got on the set. The director, Paul Verhoeven himself, has actually said in the last couple of years that he feels awful that you kind of had to wear what that movie turned out to be, because he was asking you for a more bombastic performance than I guess was initially estimated. So what was it you thought you were doing initially with this movie, Elizabeth?
Um, Again, thank you. I love that you get it. You get the nuances here because it is really, some of it is nuanced and some of it is just kind of obvious, but like I love that you're going into the deeper aspects of it. Um, Definitely when I was auditioning for it and, kept getting called back, there was a certain tone that was much more naturalistic and kind of grounded in the work, the kind of the way I had been trained as an actress, just much more like authentic and raw and vulnerable. And, all my work sessions leading up to the actual start of work on the film had more of that feel. And then when we started working, which I do need to just say, the actual process of making the movie was such a joy. Like I got to, this was a role that every girl in Hollywood wanted. I did everything possible to go for it in the way that you said. I obviously did my work at every point. I had been training as a dancer my whole life, a classically trained dancer. This was a little different, but still I had that foundation. that I just knew, they weren't going to have to get a dance double. I was going to be able to do everything that was asked on that page. And Sharon Stone had just become the biggest star in the world from that same director and writer and producer. The whole creative team were the same people that had just done Basic Instinct. So it was a real get. And there was that expectation of what something like that could do because the example was just laid out for me and for anyone involved and for representatives that were wanting their talent to be in this film. The one thing I never questioned is that, especially when you have a filmmaker, it was my first movie, and Paul Verhoeven is such a visionary, and he, going back to his Dutch films and all his movies, Total Recall, RoboCop, Basic Instinct, my trust was in him, and he had this other vision that was more, whether it was like an aggressive moment, it would be played to the extreme. And so, there was that tone, and maybe that tone is part of why it is a cult classic now. I know a lot of academics and cinephiles really break this film down to understand tone because it is such a unique tone. I think that he also wanted to explore kind of the underbelly of Vegas. He's European and wanted to kind of comment on America and what was happening at the time in that world of Vegas, and the extremes of it.
Well,
So
I,
I think,
I feel like if he had put the you hiding from your past out there a little bit quicker, like what exactly it was,
yes,
it would have made more sense. Because I watched it I've watched this movie, God, probably 20 to 30 times over the years, but it's been a couple of years
wow.
before I watched it with my wife last night. And I'm like, why wasn't this information put somewhere
I,
closer to the start of the film? Because it makes so much more sense when you do that.
I 100%. I think that people would have understood the behavior and if it was going to be that extreme, what she was running from and like why it didn't need to be a mystery. I agree with you on that point. I don't know why he wanted it to play out in that scene with Kyle where he's really, hammering it home, like what he found about my past. It's not a thriller, so I don't know why that was kind of kept secret, where you kind of want that to be something revealed later. It would have served. I think I'm so with you. Maybe your wife agreed, that it definitely would have served people watching it to understand where she was coming from earlier on. But as the actor, I had to commit to the information that I knew and how I was directed. That's the job of an actor to deliver. So but as a film goer, I think it would have, for sure served to know from the beginning because you could care about her more, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And for you just said it. You were doing everything asked of you, and you've established a reputation for yourself over the years, starting even before Saved by the Bell as somebody who was great to work with. So of course that means that you're coming in extremely prepared, but also doing
Yeah.
what's asked of you by guys. You just listed his three previous movies. There wasn't a break in between. It was RoboCop, it was Total Recall, and it was Basic Instinct. So he was coming off of three bangers, and I would argue he created a fourth in the process, even if not necessarily based
Not
on.
right away.
Now, I will say one aspect of this movie that does stick in the minds of people is the swimming pool sex scene, which I can safely say is on the Mount Rushmore of swimming pool sex scenes, only because I can't think of another movie that I'm putting on that list, Elizabeth. So it may very well be the Michael Jordan of swimming pool sex scenes.
There you go.
There's intimacy coordinators and things like that going on. What was
Oh,
it like filming that scene, though? Because that seems just completely bonkers.
there were no intimacy coordinators back in the day, so
Oh,
this
is
is a
that
new thing.
right? Okay. All right.
Think about that. None whatsoever. But I mean, well, I can just tell you that Kyle is a total professional too. So luckily, my partner in that scene was respectful, professional, and again, it was on the page, and we had to just deliver. And again, thank God I had someone that I felt safe with, and we just took care of each other and had to do what we had to do. But it definitely is a scene that people still talk about for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine there's some laughs with the insanity of that scene as well that played throughout.
Crazy, crazy. And the fountain and the neon palm trees. It's surreal and crazy. And I had to get that dive on one take. So I
Oh,
did
yeah,
it.
right.
Okay. I did it.
Yes, you did.
Forever it's on film. It's a claim to fame. Yes, I made it happen in one take.
No doubt about
Call
that.
me one take Berkeley, you know?
That's right. So as far as some of what you did after that, I still marvel at a couple of things. One is Roger Dodger, and the other is
Mm,
Any Given Sunday. And you talk about playing a more subdued character. That is like your range on display in those two films because you are much more chill, much more calm, which shows what you're capable of as an actor. Any Given Sunday is another one of those movies that was very ahead of its time in terms of the picture that Oliver Stone was painting with what professional sports and professional football in particular was
yeah.
about, and maybe the direction that it was heading as well. What was that experience like for you, not just working with Stone, but also trading lines with the great Al Pacino, too?
Oh, I mean, yes. Kind of my moment after Showgirls came out, for a little bit, I got dropped by my representatives and I couldn't even audition for anything. It was a very frustrating time. Like I wasn't allowed to do what I do and what I had devoted my entire life to. I had done theater. I had my equity card from the age of 15 and I had worked on stage and danced with New York City Ballet. Like, I mean, I was a professional. It wasn't like I fell into that film, so it was a lot of, for myself, of reclaiming why I love it, taking an inventory on, what do I want going forward? What type of people, not just I want to work again, but what type of people do I want to work with? So, like you said, Roger Dodger and First Wives Club was a comedic way in because I had come from comedy as well with Goldie Hawn, Diane Keaton, and First Wives Club. But then Any Given Sunday, again, another bold director who I really respect, but they say like don't get too close to your heroes sometimes, and I have to say, working with Al Pacino, he lived up to it and then some. So that was a real saving grace for me because it can go either way. I'm sure when you interview people or meet people that maybe someone it's like a legend in your eyes. You hope they don't disappoint, and he was just incredible. We even had a few more scenes together, and just he's a dream. He was so respectful. He knew that I was all about the work. I had coached with someone that he had worked with as well, so they were familiar, with my background and my training. So there was just this instant chemistry and respect, from my screen test with him. But I loved being on that set. Such great actors. We were in Miami, we were in South Beach, and Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz and I had known each other since we were, I think, 14 through modeling. So we had history. It was an incredible time. I mean, that film was pretty genius. I don't know how you feel about it, but I love that movie and love being a part of it.
Yeah, I talked with Dennis Quaid a few years ago about it. That movie is again, it's another one of those bombastic films where it's like maybe exaggerating some of what was happening at the time, but it was doing so with intent to try and help people better understand just the insanity that is youth sports, and then also football,
Right.
from the behind the scenes stuff to what's happening in the locker room and just how crazy things can be on the field too. And maybe the antithesis of that is a movie that you and I have now both mentioned, and that is Roger Dodger. It's an indie flick. You're hanging out with your real life friend Jennifer Beals as you
Yes.
encounter Campbell Scott and the young Jesse Eisenberg. And man, that
Yes, that was his first. That was Jesse's first big movie. I actually helped him get a suit for the premiere because I was like, "This is how you do it." He's someone I'm still close to this day, which is really special. I mean, I think had just turned 18, and I knew he was going to go far because he was a genius then. You just knew. So it's really exciting. And I love his movies. He's a great filmmaker. Maybe I'll work with him sometime in that capacity because there is that respect there and history. It's so nice to work with people that you have that trust with and that history with. I understand why people work with the same people over and over. I mean, obviously it's nice to kind of, break into a new kind of club with people and collaborate. But the ease and comfort, with your work, and anyone watching this knows, like when you just have that, like that lingo that you don't even need to explain, you can take the work to a deeper place and just fly together, with that bond. So nothing replaces that history.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I've heard you talk a little bit about the experience that you had performing Lenny in London's West End with the great Eddie Izzard. Lenny, of course, being Lenny Bruce, the legendary trailblazing comedian. Considering what you had been through up to that point with Showgirls and how you had been ostracized, did you take any lessons away from learning a little bit more about Lenny Bruce's life story and performing in London like you did over a number of weeks?
Um, I mean, he really, you know, he paved the way for especially comedians, to be able to use their voice and use language. And I mean, he got punished for it, but he definitely opened the doors for people to really talk about things that they weren't really talking about. Um, he was a genius. I'll never forget. Sir Peter Hall was the director, and they had auditioned me, and he wanted to bring me there. And it's very rare that Americans go to do theater, especially then. They usually hire Brits, and it was an honor to get to live there and work there. And Eddie Izzard is another genius. So to work with him, he was brilliant. I mean, each night in the sections in the play where he had to launch into like a gig where he faces out to the audience and does like one of his Lenny Bruce gigs, Eddie had 8 to 10 of them fully memorized. And I never knew on a given night which one he was going to bring out. He's so spontaneous. He kept obviously to the structure of the play, but like you just never knew in those moments, like what brilliance was going to come out. And I learned so much through that whole experience. It was also, I think when I look back, and I'm kind of realizing this as I'm talking to you right now, I value that experience so much. It was almost like I was starting to build back step by step and to really do the work that I had always intended. That singular experience really changed the game for me personally, to have that experience as like, you can't hide behind anything when you're on stage. There's no take two. There's no magic in the editing room to make someone look good or come off a certain way. It was really important for me and my self-trust to drop into something like that. I had to be fearless. Like I said, I was the only American in this cast. I was living in a country I'd never lived in. I worked there for many months on this, rehearsals and performances. And it was a real game changer for my self-esteem again, and to really understand what direction I wanted to take things after that. So it was, and I actually met the love of my life after that. So it's interesting how something like that just brought me back to my core of why I love doing what I do, and that I'm not going to let anything stop my dream and my vision for myself, and I'm not going to let, I was not going to give up on myself. Like that moment really was a reclaiming, if you want to put it that way. So,
Well, it's like sharing scenes with Al Pacino, performing this play with very well established, highly thought of people around you, doing
yeah.
something with Woody Allen. Like all of these things help you either rebuild or maintain a sort of confidence in yourself, considering what you went through, not just in terms of the criticism, but literally getting dropped by your own agency as a result, which it disgusts me. It pisses me off. It's just like one person bearing the onus for all of that. I know you've kind of compared it to your own sort of personal scarlet letter, but it's like moments like these that allowed you to reestablish that belief in self and continue working your ass off, but also doing so with a ton of grace as well. So I guess
Thank you.
kudos to you on that. I don't necessarily have a question other than to just give you the highest possible praise for making it through that on the other side.
Thank you. I mean, it was certainly rough. I don't like to pretend like I just shoved it down and I was okay. It was a lot of overcoming. It was that was brutal. It was humiliating. And when I look back, I think of like this young girl. I was 21 years old, and I just think the industry is different now. Like there were no one really stood up and said anything, whether it was female agents, executives. I mean, Sherry Lansing was someone that was a real mentor at the time.
Mm.
And she's about as powerful and amazing as they come and generous. But, it was a very isolating thing. And just to kind of crawl back out from it, as opposed to going back home to Detroit where I grew up with this dream. But for me, there was no other option. It's just kind of like, you find out what you're made of. And I found out that I can take it. It hurts, but I can take it. I had my head handed to me on a national level. And, but this isn't the end of the story. I'm going to write this story. So,
Oh yeah.
well, certain things, in the building, that there's a lot of patience, when you're building back, because, I was maybe hoping certain things would happen faster or turn around quicker. But you also realize the depth of the one thing at a time and kind of how those inform the next and the next. And I think it's part of why I wanted to be of service to teenage girls. I started in 2000, not to jump ahead, but like in 2006, I started a workshop that I started offering as a volunteer in middle schools and high schools for adolescent girls. And I still do this work, and we have a New York Times bestselling book, but it was me meeting on their football fields, in their middle schools and high schools, in their cafeterias, in their auditoriums, with the entire female student body of a given school. And, to be able to, I mean, I was kind of uniquely qualified. Well, I'm not a therapist. When you go through things and have empathy and tools to be able to offer, I wanted to be able to help girls at that point of life, because I feel like the seeds of self-esteem are planted during that time. And it's also the time where a girl can so quickly abandon self in the name of wanting validation, or, that oftentimes they'll betray themselves in order to be approved of. And I just thought, you know what? I've been tested in this. I want to provide this and give this. And it just kind of started grassroots. And then I started working domestically and internationally. And so that service work, it's called Ask Elizabeth, has been definitely a heart and soul mission. And I certainly would not have created it. I'm sure of this now. I don't think I was so aware of it when I was kind of moved to take action. But I can tell you now, looking back and after all these years of doing it, that if I had not been, let's say, hurt in that way during that time, I don't think it would have been a part of my life's mission to help others in that way. Because I know a lot of actresses that might have just gone back home after what happened to me and felt like, a victim. And I was not ever going to buy into that.
So the book was based on the 15 most common questions that you were getting at the time, a little bit more than a decade ago. If there was maybe a 16th question that's a most common question in 2025 that you get from these young girls that wasn't in the book, what would that be, Elizabeth?
Oh, it would definitely be connected to social media, because I started this in 2006 and I collected the most asked questions from every workshop. And obviously for a book, I had to choose like the most asked and the most universal, depending on whatever. So, I mean, I saw the connection no matter what socioeconomic background girls were from, or no matter what region in the country. There is a collective emotional life of a girl, that rite of passage. And so we had to pick 15 of the most asked for the book. But definitely, if I, let's say, added a new chapter, an update, all the rest stays the same, but definitely the impact and the pressure of social media on girls. I mean, people talk about it all the time now, thank God. I mean, that book, The Anxious Generation, is such an incredible book for parents to read. Jonathan Haidt is bringing a voice to something that, needs healing and fixing because our not just girls. I'm a boy mom. Okay, so I can tell you from boys too. My son does not have social media. He just turned 13, but I see what it does, and I think there aren't enough conversations about it with girls. So that's an area for sure. I can't tell you what the specific question would be, but it probably would be, how do I not let the voices of what I hear from either my friends or strangers on social media, or feeling left out of things because they see it play out in real time. How do I not let that affect my self-esteem? We growing up, we used to hear people say, "Oh, you might hear someone went to a party, or you might hear some so and so had plans." But people sometimes, some of these girls they're home on a Saturday and they're seeing that they were clearly, it's playing out in real time. Their friends at a party or someone's house, and they didn't get asked. That's crushing at that age. So I don't make light of those things. And I think sometimes the advice is, well, this will pass, but that's not really enough, because at that moment, it's sometimes life and death to them in terms of how important belonging is. So I always say, like, find something outside of the social realm, whether it's sports, dance, something to be committed to that's not just the school environment, because it's too limiting. Your world is too limited. And so, I see all the time, like, girls who are involved with activities outside of it. They're not looking for their self-worth from the group as much.
Completely agreed with you. As a father of two kids, one of the biggest challenges is not just social media, but technology in general, and trying to teach our kids to understand the value of being present in front
Yes.
of others, and being able to think on your feet and problem solve, and not necessarily need to stare at a device to do that. The devices are
And it's
nice.
hard, it's addictive, and it was built that way, right? So it's kind of it is hard. It's hard as parents, and especially obviously during the pandemic, where that was a way for them to stay connected. And then, there was a way to be able to connect with friends and FaceTime or video games or whatever it might be. And we can't pretend that those don't exist, but it's easier said than done. There's obviously boundaries around it, conversations around it, and then making sure that there are activities where they're unplugged, because otherwise it's too much, right?
Yeah. You mentioned you have a 13-year-old son. What do you love about motherhood?
Everything. The greatest role of my life, aside from being Greg's wife, you know, is just the most incredible. I love being a mom. I'm also glad that and grateful that I had Sky at the point of life that I did, because there's so much with my work that, I was so invested in, and it was so much a part of my identity that I think I was so ready to pour all this love into this amazing baby and take a little time to really just reconnect with the most important thing in the world. And that's, having a family and raising this beautiful, good human and all that comes with that. It's the privilege of my life, and all the rest, it gives meaning to everything in a different way. Like, my work has deepened, my creativity, there's obviously priorities, as like shift. And I actually think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It just kind of like everything just is hyper focused in terms of, where you spend your time, what you give to friendships, all of it. It really, like, your time is now very precious. So, or at least it is with the way we want to be as parents.
Yeah, exactly. Very well put there. Beautifully put. All right, last thing now, Elizabeth. You once famously said, much more dramatically than I'm about to say it, that you're so excited, you're so excited, you're so scared. What
Well,
excites you in
a little more
2025?
dramatic. Should I give you some caffeine pills and then you can do that again? Take two.
Where my my monotonous computer voice kicks in really nicely. But based on that, though, that famous
But
line
you
from
knew your
Fearless,
lines. I'm very impressed. You knew your lines.
What excites you in 2025?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, this is certainly a full circle moment in my creative life, to be able to celebrate with fans this movie that we've shared, that there were hardships, but then the collective kind of celebratory aspect to something, I think I wish a full circle moment for everyone on, especially on something that, I'm at a point that I didn't, let's say, need this to happen to heal me, from something, because I've done my work internally, emotionally, and then creatively. But I can't help but tell you that the joy that it brings me to be able to meet with an audience where this has been embraced, reassessed, and we get to have these really special moments. A few years ago, I couldn't have told you this was happening, but it was always in my mind, like, wouldn't it be amazing to bring this to people where we get to have an exchange? And I do get to share part of the journey that I've not shared, but also what a reminder in life. It's really affirming and joyful to be able to enjoy it in a new way, like get a redo. I can't, so I'll tell you, my parents are happy too. And, it's not like at the time my parents could call, let's say something happened at school where they can call the principal and say, this is not okay. This was an industry thing that they had to tolerate. So it's definitely a sweet moment to see them seeing the joy expressed for it. That's something really exciting about 2025 is this reality, this moment, to be able to say thank you to fans for making it the cult classic that it is, to also just meet in person. I think there's something really powerful about that. I'm going to be at the Paramount Theater, as you know, October 9th, which is such a beautiful historic theater. And I think Austin has such an amazing community of, and such a cross section and celebration of music and film. And I think people are really open-minded. So this is going to be really exciting. And there's a few more fun things. I have the show All's Fair coming out, Ryan Murphy's new show, with some really great ladies, Naomi Watts, Kim Kardashian, Glenn Close, Sarah Paulson, Niecy Nash. So that's going to be pretty exciting as well. And I can't wait to see what comes next. It's kind of a time of new beginnings, and I'm here for it.
And then also Shell, which just dropped on the streamers for purchase or rental a couple of
Yes.
years ago, starring Elizabeth Moss and Kate Hudson. So, man, you're a part of some pretty all-star casts here with these next couple of projects coming out, Elizabeth.
Wonderful director Max Minghella, who's also an actor and on Handmaid's Tale with Elizabeth. He directed it, and that's a new genre too, body horror. So it has a little bit of a camp element, and then Cobra Kai this year, which was really fun. That was kind of a childhood. You grew up with me. I grew up with that show. So it was pretty epic when they called, and our family watched the show too. But to be sitting there with Ralph Macchio and it was pretty amazing.
Well, it's fun. It's funny because the original Karate Kid and Saved by the Bell got a similar YouTube treatment with somebody pointing out that the Ralph Macchio character was actually the bad guy.
Yes.
As somebody was pointing out, Zach Morris.
Zach Morris is trash. Yes. Yes. No, Mark Paul laughs about that too. And he's like, wait, they're right. So he had a podcast where he kind of would laugh and talk about that. So, which was, by the way, really fun. We got to do the reboot for a couple of seasons that we produced, and got to revisit those roles with my beloved cast. We're like siblings, so that was really fun too. Yeah.
Well, this has been a really fun conversation today. Just to reemphasize to folks, this Thursday at the Paramount Theater here in Austin, you can check out Showgirls, followed by a Q&A with Elizabeth Berkley at the end. She's also going to be out for an intro at the very beginning. And there are also VIP tickets available. It's separate from the ticket that you buy to get in to see the film. What a great opportunity to get to meet Elizabeth
And
after
take a photo.
filming, after the Q&A, get a photo op as well with your childhood crush. All that is available through austintheater.org. He is the great Elizabeth Berkley Lauren. Check her out this Thursday in Austin. This is just the start of a 30th anniversary celebration, a victory lap for her with the awesome movie that is Showgirls. Elizabeth, this has been a real honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for the time today.
You know what? Thank you. I have loved this interview. I just love your thoughtful questions. I could keep talking to you. I know we're at that point, but seriously, I'd love to do it again for the next time. I've had the best time with you.